Angad Bisht is in for the fight of his life. The semi-final matchups for the Road to UFC Tournament Season 3 have finally been announced. And to no one's surprise, Kiru Singh Sahota is going to be taking on Ruel Panjales of the Philippines in the semi-final matchup. And on the other side of the bracket, we've got our very own Pahari Beast, Angad Bisht, taking on what I think is going to be his toughest fight in Donghun Choi from South Korea. We've already talked about Angad Bisht's last fight against John Almanza, where he basically broke the poor boy's orbital bone and beat him into a living death almost in the first round. It was an impressive victory by Angad, and now it sets him up for a fight against Donghun Choi. It was an impressive showing again by Angad, and he got to show off his striking skills as well as his takedowns and ground control, as he basically held John Almanza down, pinned him with the right kind of pins, and prevented escapes and rained down hellacious right hands until the fight was stopped. Sure, again, as we've talked about before, his opponent was not on his level, but Bisht basically just walked through this kid without breaking a sweat. You could even see it in his post-fight interview. He was just like, this is another win for me, right? It was an emphatic win for Angad, an important win for Indian MMA as well. But the next guy he's up against, Donghun Choi, is no laughing matter. Like, Angad better take this kid real seriously. He's young, he's only 25 years old, and he's already had 7 fights and is undefeated again. Sure, again, we've talked about undefeated opponents with John Almanza, etc. And people will say, yeah, but you know, Almanza was also undefeated. But then you also have to remember where Choi comes from, right? Choi is from Korea, which has a much more deep MMA base, right? They've got fighters in the UFC, they've got several promotions that have produced high-level MMA fighters. Punyajit just fought in Road FC recently. They have a very strong and deep MMA culture. The competition there is very great, the level of fighters is very good, and the guys they've been fighting have been very good throughout their career. So if you really look at Donghun Choi's record and you look at his fight style, it goes to show that this kid is the real deal. He's 7-0 against very good competition. He's a champion at Double G, which is a promotion in Korea, and he's a champion at Gladiators Challenge in Japan as well. In his last fight, he fought against a Chinese opponent called Jin Shui, who's 23 years old, and another prospect from the UFC PI. But it's the fight before that I really want to talk about, where he moved on to Gladiator Challenger Series in Japan, and he fought a gentleman called Yoshinori Wada. Right, the fight is on YouTube. It's a little difficult to find because it's in Japan. The subtitle is in Japanese, so you're going to have to search for his name a little bit. But he stopped Wada in the second round with a beautiful crescent kick off the southpaw stance. So this is his left leg kicking Wada right in the solar plexus. This was in the second round. Again, as I've talked about before, he scraped by Jin Shui, and in that particular fight, in the fight with Jin Shui, he was able to show very good takedown defense, excellent scrambling ability, is incredibly strong in the clinch, and showed very good separation. He was able to break away from Jin Shui a lot. In terms of striking, Choi is basically a stance switcher. He'll primarily start on southpaw and then he'll end up in orthodox. But then from southpaw, he fires a beautiful switch kick, right? And it's something that Angad really needs to watch out for, because he almost got caught by a head kick by John Almanza. So again, Angad is orthodox. This kid is southpaw. So the open stance leaves Angad open for body kicks, inside leg kicks, or even head kicks. And he's got to watch out for that crescent kick. That thing comes right up the middle and hits you right in the solar plexus. Very dangerous shot by him. The one chance I see Angad having is maybe taking Choi down. But again, from what I've seen and from the analysis of his fights, his takedown defense is excellent as well. He spends very little time on his back. And as soon as his back hits the ground, the guy is already scrambling up to top position. Through the commentary, you guys will know, and if you follow him on Instagram as well, Choi is a black belt in judo. And if anything, if you know anything about judo in Korea, you know these guys are really serious about that sport. He fights like that as well. He's strong, fights aggressive, and he fights with a sense of urgency, even when he's on the ground. Like, for example, in his fight with Yoshinori Wada at Gladiators Challenge, he took Wada down, and Wada smart, very good on the ground, very good in the bottom, held him in half guard in the lockdown. The lockdown is a position that was popularized by someone called Eddie Bravo, who's very famous in the Jiu-Jitsu scene. And it's a holding position where you're able to control people's lower bodies. The guy could do nothing to Choi. He held him in the lockdown, and Choi's hips were so strong that he could not move the kid. And he basically broke him on the ground. He hit him with ground strikes to the body, to the head, And as soon as the second round started, Wada walked in and got cracked with the most beautiful crescent kick I've ever seen, right in the solar plexus, and dropped him right on the spot. Now, this is the thing that Angad's got to really, really watch out for. Someone like Choi is what I would call a prototypical new age fighter. Someone who understands angles, someone who understands not moving back in a straight line, not attacking in a straight line. The only issue with Angad is that Angad fights like a slightly older fighter, like a veteran, right? Like he trades shots in the center of the cage. He stays in the pocket for a little too long. Choi has basically fought guys like Angad. I don't think Angad has ever fought a guy like Choi. Angad has a tendency, unless he knows that the opponent is just absolutely not on his level and he bulldozes them. If that doesn't happen, he tends to start a little bit slow, right? Hang back in the pocket, tends to fight on the back foot. Against a guy like Choi, you cannot fight this dude on the back foot, right? You have to be pressuring him. You have to be in his face. If you give Choi any space to strike, he'll start throwing inside leg kicks. He'll start throwing body shots. And eventually, once these two kicks start connecting, the kick will come up to the head. Angad's striking is good. It's serviceable. But the only thing I'd like to see him incorporate in his game more is more straight punches. Angad tends to throw a lot of hooks, right? And if you guys all know, a straight line is the fastest way to a target, right? And Choi throws a lot of straight shots. Angad also tends to get hit a little bit too much for my liking. He doesn't move his head off the center line. He's always generally in or out. And you can watch it in his fight. You can see this in his fight with Chaitanya Gawali as well. Chaitanya is not as experienced a striker as Choi, and even then he was catching Angad. The way Angad won that fight was he basically just wore out Chaitanya. He broke Chaitanya's will and choked him out in the second round. With a guy like Choi, much more lateral movement is needed to really contend with a high-level striker, which Donghun Choi is. There are times when Angad is just getting hit in the pocket, and you cannot do that with a guy like Choi. It's a surefire recipe for disaster. Choi might not present a submission threat, but the threat of strikes ending the fight are very, very, very high. Choi could definitely outwork Angad on the feet. If Angad is not able to take him down, I see Choi basically out-angling Angad on the feet with hitting him with powerful strikes. And if Angad is not able to get his ground offense and his takedown offense going, I see the fight being stopped in the second or the third round by strikes. That's a prediction I see. If Angad is not able to implement his game plan, again, we're all behind Angad because we think he's one of the better MMA fighters in the country and has got the skills to compete at that level. But against a prospect like Choi, it's going to be a very, 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 very tough fight for Angad. There's certain things that Angad does as a veteran that I've watched in his fights that could get him in trouble, but I don't know if they will or not. He does this thing called the cheeky nodder, where if his opponent is moving in, he plants himself, lowers his level, and as soon as his opponent closes the distance, he sort of like jumps up a little bit. You'll see guys like Henry Cejudo do it a lot. It's called the cheeky nodder. It's kind of like a headbutt. And he did it with Chungren Koren. Chungren was walking Angad down. Angad was having a tough time containing Chungren. And this is a strategy that he figured out. He hit him with a cheeky nodder, and you could see as soon as that happened, kind of either broke Chungren's nose or really, really hurt him. And Chungren was basically fighting at a deficit from then on. Very smart veteran move, right? This goes to show that Angad has been studying the game. He understands how to play the game. This is something that he's been doing for a really long time. He's been in the scene for since 2012, 2013, something like that. He's been in here for a long time. So if there's anything, what I would call this is what a veteran would do. And Angad is a true veteran. He deserves to be in this particular place. But this all comes with a big caveat of but. And the but here is that he's got to get past a guy like Choi. And in the previous comments of our previous video, one of the comments did say that Choi is a tougher fight for Angad than Kiru, and I completely agree. After having watched both competitors and analyzed the footage, Angad definitely is. This fight is going to be an uphill climb for him. He has been getting away with a few defensive deficiencies in his previous fights, but I think a guy like Choi is actually going to expose these deficiencies. I'm hoping the guys at Warriors Cove are studying tape on Choi, because there are some openings there. I don't want to reveal them here, obviously. Question is, can Angad get it to the ground? That is the main question. Can Angad take down this judo black belt and hold him there for 2-3 rounds, maybe even finish him, take his back? If he can't, he's going to have to fight Choi at kickboxing range, which probably would be a very bad idea for him. Look, hopefully Angad and his team at Warriors Cove can pull this off. There's a lot of precedent set by Anshul that an Indian can win this tournament. So if Angad does get it done, he'll be only the second guy to have ever done it. So hopefully he'll be able to bring us back the road to UFC trophy and the victory. But for now, his next fight's Donghun Choi sometime in August, September. We're not really sure. Once we have the date, we'll let you guys know. But thank you so much for watching. From me, Andrew, and the production team at Live MMA. Thank you guys again. Please like, please share, please subscribe, comment on the video. And remember, live MMA now.